The cast of 12 O'Clock High flew bombing missions on screen. Yet what happened to these men after the cameras stopped is the real story. 10 of them are gone now. One died on the very day he finished filming a scene. Here is the cast now and then. We start with number 1. He was the face that sold the show, and after a single season the network decided he was finished. Robert Lansing had made General Frank Savage the reason critics respected the series, a hard commander whose authority looked more like exhaustion than glory. The program was shifting from a 10 o'clock hour to 7:30. The producers wanted a younger face, and so his character was shot down over Europe in the Season 2 premiere to clear the cockpit for a replacement. Quinn Martin offered a tangled public reason about time slots and network wishes, while a separate account says Lansing was released for being difficult and too proud. The answer he gave is the part worth keeping. He refused to attack anyone, said his contract was with Martin alone and that he had no cause to doubt the man, and warned only that the earlier hour would cost the show its quality. Events proved him right, and the ratings slid. Born Robert Howell Brown in San Diego, he served 2 years in the Army in Japan, then ground through lean years, once selling a pint of blood for $5 in eating money and driving a repertory bus thousands of miles to act each night wherever he could park it. He married soap actress Emily McLaughlin and raised a son with her, then wed twice more, the final marriage holding until his last day. Cancer took him on the 23rd of October 1994 at 66, a lifelong smoker who kept acting almost to the end. He lies at Union Field Cemetery in Ridgewood, Queens. The general who never once bent on screen became, in real life, the rare leading man who lost his own series and walked away without a trace of bitterness. Number 2 is the man they brought in to save the show, and the choice backfired on the people who made it. Paul Burke was handed the lead as Colonel Joe Gallagher, sold as the fresher, younger face, even though he was 2 years older than the star he replaced, a fact television critics pointed out at once. Audiences resented the swap, and the ratings the executives hoped to lift began to fall instead. The role still mattered to him for a reason that had nothing to do with numbers, because he met his second wife, actress Lynn Peters, when she guest-starred in a 1966 episode. Born in New Orleans, he was the son of a boxer who once fought heavyweight champion Gene Tunney, and he grew up inside the family restaurant and nightclub in the French Quarter, watching restless customers he later credited for pushing him toward acting. 2 Emmy nominations already sat on his record from the detective drama Naked City. He married twice, raised 4 children, and stayed with Lynn to the end. Leukemia and lymphoma took him on the 13th of September 2009 at 83, with Lynn beside him in their Palm Springs home. His body was cremated, and the family kept the resting place of his ashes private. One detail outlasts every credit on his page, because his daughter Dina is the mother of actress Aaliyah Shawkat, making the bomber colonel her grandfather. The leading man hired to keep a war show aloft became a quiet root of modern Hollywood, his bloodline reaching 2 generations forward into a comedy few of his fans would ever connect to him. Consider number 3, a working actor who walked off television sets and into the United States Congress. Before any of that, Robert Dornan played Captain Bob Fowler, a recurring member of the bomber crew across the final 2 seasons. The flight jacket was a brief chapter. Born in New York City to a Ziegfeld Follies showgirl and a clothing store owner, he flew in the Air Force and the Reserve, hosted his own Los Angeles talk show, and won an Emmy for it before politics pulled him in. He served in the House of Representatives across 2 stretches between 1977 and 1997, built a name as one of the chamber's fiercest conservative voices, and reached so far that he chased the Republican nomination for president in 1996. That same year ended his run when he lost his seat to Loretta Sanchez. He married Sally Hansen in 1955, and they raised 5 children, and his daughter Kate was once married to actor Miguel Ferrer, threading another acting family into his own. As of the spring of 2026, he is 93 years old and alive, one of only 2 men from this cast still drawing breath. The path he took stands almost alone here. Many of these actors stayed in the business or stepped quietly out of it, while Dornan turned a small part on a war drama into a launchpad for a life lived on the floor of Congress, shouting into the cameras of a very different kind of broadcast. The man who flew pretend missions over Germany spent his later years in real fights that filled newspapers, the only member of this roster whose second act made the first one look like a footnote. The next man wore a sheriff's badge in one of the most honored films ever made, and he was gone within months of this show signing off. Our fourth man lived only a few months past the show that should have been a new beginning. Frank Overton played Major Harvey Stovall, the ground officer and quiet conscience of the group, the single performer who stayed for all 3 seasons. The series ended in January of 1967. By April, he was dead. A heart attack took him in Pacific Palisades on the 24th of that month. At 49, an actor who had always looked older than his years finally caught by a heart that gave out too soon. His Star Trek episode had reached the air only weeks before, so audiences were still seeing fresh work from a man already gone. Born in Babylon, New York, he had come up through the New York stage with Broadway runs long before the cameras found him. One of the Twilight Zone's gentlest hours belonged to him, the episode Walking Distance, where a worn-down man wanders back into his own boyhood. He married twice and was survived by his wife Phyllis and a daughter. The screen legacy he left reached far past this show because he had played Sheriff Heck Tate in To Kill a Mockingbird and General Bogan in Fail Safe, 2 roles of quiet moral weight that outlived him by generations. What the screen lost was a face that made integrity look quiet and ordinary, the kind of decency that never needed to raise its voice. He rests at Hollywood Forever Cemetery, in the Garden of Memory, Lot 44, laid years later beside the same wife who survived him. The steady, fatherly officer who outlasted every cast shakeup on screen could not outlast the year the show ended, the finale and the funeral arriving almost in the same breath. Here is number 5, a man who became more famous pretending to be a doctor than he ever was playing a soldier. Chris Robinson came aboard in the 2nd season as Technical Sergeant Sandy Kamansky, the young flight engineer and gunner the show hoped would draw a younger crowd. The uniform was only the start of a 60-year run. Born in West Palm Beach, Florida, he had clawed up from an uncredited bit part through westerns and crime dramas before this role gave him a name. He had shared frames with Burt Lancaster in The Young Savages and Birdman of Alcatraz before the Bomber Show lifted him out of bit parts. His largest fame arrived on daytime television as Dr. Rick Weber on General Hospital, a character so woven into the show that his return in 2002 ended with him bludgeoned to death by a candlestick swung by a rival. He found a second soap home as Jack Hamilton on The Bold and the Beautiful. To a wider audience, he was the man in the cough syrup commercial who admitted he was not a doctor but only played one on television, a line that trailed him for decades. He married more than once and left behind a wife, Jackie, and 6 sons. Heart failure took him on the 9th of June, 2025, at 86, after a long stretch of cardiac trouble, and he slipped away peacefully in his sleep at his ranch near Sedona, Arizona, just past midnight. His family has not made a resting place public, and the last place he lived was that quiet desert ranch. The young gunner who fired from a bomber turret grew old as television's favorite pretend physician, and he closed his story far from any battlefield, on a patch of Arizona land all his own. Number 6 began his Hollywood life carrying messages, and ended it as one of the most recognized voices on television. Richard Anderson passed through this show as Brigadier General Phil Dowd in a handful of 1966 episodes, another crisp officer in a career full of them. The general was a small stop on a very long road. Born in Long Branch, New Jersey, he served briefly in the Army, studied acting in Los Angeles, and was taken under the wing of Cary Grant before working his way up from an MGM messenger to a screen regular. He married into the closest thing the old studios had to royalty when he wed Catherine Thalberg, daughter of studio chief Irving Thalberg and the actress Norma Shearer, and they raised 3 children before parting. His films included Forbidden Planet, Paths of Glory, and 7 Days in May. He had even survived an operating table scene opposite Rock Hudson in the chilling thriller Seconds, one more uniform and authority role in a closet full of them. The role that fixed him in memory came later, as Oscar Goldman, the spy chief he played on 2 hit series at the same time, speaking the promise that a broken man could be rebuilt because the technology existed. Natural causes took him on the 31st of August, 2017, at 91, at his home in Beverly Hills. He rests at Pierce Brothers Westwood Village Memorial Park in Los Angeles, a small green plot ringed by the city that made him. The actor who vowed on screen to rebuild a shattered man, stronger and faster, had quietly married into the bloodline of the studio that built the Golden Age itself. The man you meet next was at work when his heart gave out, and the production rewrote his role before the day was over. The seventh name on this list died with the production still rolling, and the people he worked beside learned of it on the set that same day. John Larkin played Major General Wiley Crowe, the commanding officer above Savage in the first season, a man of seasoned authority. That authority came from a long life behind microphones. Before any camera found him, he had been one of radio's busiest voices, the man who spoke Perry Mason for listeners from 1948 to 1955 and appeared in an estimated 7,500 radio dramas. He had carried daytime audiences, too, playing a hard-edged newspaperman on the soap opera The Edge of Night before Hollywood claimed him. A heart attack took him on the 29th of January 1965 at 52, after he complained of indigestion at his Studio City home, and his wife rushed him to a Los Angeles hospital. He died on a filming day. The crew got word while still at work, then quietly reshot one of his scenes and rewrote the scenes that followed, so another character could absorb his role before the day was done. He had married more than once, leaving children across those marriages, including a daughter who later acted on General Hospital. Two of his films reached theaters only after he was gone. His body was cremated at the Chapel of the Pines in Los Angeles, the voice that had been Perry Mason to millions reduced to ashes in a single afternoon. The general who commanded the group from above fell silent in the middle of an ordinary workday, and the show simply rode around his empty chair before the cameras stopped for the night. Number 8 is still alive, and the small parts he played here were the earliest rungs of one of the longest climbs in the business. Bruce Dern turned up in 4 early episodes in nameless roles, a hungry young actor grabbing whatever minutes the camera would give him. Those minutes led somewhere almost no one could have predicted. Born in Chicago into a prominent family, he trained at the Actors Studio after a director spotted him on stage, and he built a body of work that earned him 2 Academy Award nominations, one for Coming Home and one for Nebraska. His private life carried a grief that shaped him. He married actress Diane Ladd in 1960, and their first daughter drowned at 18 months old in 1962, a loss Ladd later called one a parent never recovers from. Their second daughter, born in 1967, grew up to be the Oscar-winning actress Laura Dern. The couple divorced, yet the family they made kept reaching new heights. As of the spring of 2026, Dern is 89, days from turning 90, still working, recently sharing the screen with his daughter in a streaming series. The woman he once married, Diane Ladd, died only months ago in November of 2025 at 89. The Forgotten Airman from a few 1964 episodes became a 2-time Oscar nominee and the father of an Oscar winner. His briefest early work the first small step toward a career most of his old castmates never came close to matching. If these lives are landing with you, take a moment to subscribe so the rest of this cast can find you. There is more ahead worth staying for. Number 9 holds the saddest pairing in this entire story. 2 people who loved each other for 34 years and were taken by the same disease within a single month. Andrew Duggan played Brigadier General Ed Britt, the senior officer over Gallagher in the later seasons, a man of granite authority. The granite hit a long ordeal. In 1979, he was diagnosed with throat cancer, and surgeons removed part of his larynx, leaving him with a permanent opening in his neck to breathe, and a roughened voice he refused to let end his career. He kept working, leaning into the very sound the disease had handed him. Born in Franklin, Indiana, and raised partly in Texas, he had served in the Army during the war in a special unit led by an established actor whose support first turned him toward the stage. He married Broadway dancer Elizabeth Logue, whom he called Betty, and the two stayed together 34 years and raised 3 children. Audiences later knew his face from the original Walton's film and from the Western Lancer, where he played the rancher patriarch Murdoch Lancer. Cancer finally took him on the 15th of May, 1988, at 64, at the UCLA Medical Center. The part that breaks the heart came next, because Betty was fighting cancer of her own, and she died just 23 days after her husband, on the 7th of June. The two of them gone inside a single month? He was cremated, his ashes scattered in a quiet, peaceful spot the family kept to themselves. The actor who played presidents and generals, all command and certainty, spent his final years breathing through a hole in his throat and still showing up to work, then left this world so close to the woman he loved that they almost seemed to refuse to be parted. Of everyone on this call sheet, the loss of Andrew and Betty Duggan within 23 days is the one that stays with me. Tell me in the comments which story hit you hardest. The next man carried one of the strangest secrets in early television, hidden just above his eyes. The 10th man is remembered best for a single moment when he reached up and lifted his cap to reveal a third eye in the middle of his forehead. Barney Phillips played Major Doc Kaiser, the flight surgeon who stitched together the bodies the missions broke, a warm and steady presence on the base. The doctor was one role among hundreds. Born Bernard Offner in St. Louis to a leather salesman and a German immigrant mother, he moved west in the mid-1930s, broke in with a small Western, then enlisted in the Army in 1941 and served in the Signal Corps through the war. He came home and built a career as one of television's reliable faces, the sergeant beside Joe Friday on the original Dragnet, the voice of a cartoon genie, a fixture of guest spots across 2 decades. The single image that outlived all of it came from The Twilight Zone, where his mild diner counterman pulled off his cap to show he was no man of earth at all. He was married to his wife from 1941 until the end. Cancer took him on the 17th of August, 1982, at 68 in Los Angeles. The place where he was laid to rest was never clearly recorded, his grave one of the few on this list the public cannot point to. The gentle wartime doctor who mended pilots became, for a different generation, the three-eyed visitor behind a diner counter, his warmest role eclipsed forever by one unforgettable trick of the cap. Number 11 walked away from acting and spent the rest of his life building the shows that put other actors on screen. Lou Gallo played Major Joe Cobb in the first season, one of Savage's officers in the early episodes, a sturdy supporting hand. Those supporting roles were never the whole plan. Born in Mount Kisco, New York, he served as an Army infantryman in the Korean War, then turned up on Broadway in 1955, where he met the woman who would change the shape of his life. He married television producer Lillian Drazik, and the two stayed together for 42 years, raising a daughter and a son. She became one of the first women in Hollywood to form a female-producing partnership, and he moved behind the camera himself, producing series that ran for years. That marriage outlasted nearly every union on this list. Gallo died on the 11th of June 2000 at 71 in Los Angeles, one single day short of his 72nd birthday. The place he was laid to rest is not recorded in any public file, a quiet absence at the end of a loud and busy career. The officer who took orders on screen spent his real life giving them from the producer's chair, half of a 42-year marriage between two people who built television side by side. We end at number 12 with a man whose road ran from 10 shows a day on the vaudeville stage to a quiet grave in rural Oklahoma. Paul Newland played Lieutenant General Bill Pritchard, the high-ranking officer who appeared at pivotal moments across the run, a booming presence in a large frame. The size made the nickname Tiny Run as a joke. Born in Plattsmouth, Nebraska, in 1903, he came up the hardest possible way, grinding through as many as 10 vaudeville performances in a single day before film and television gave him steadier work. He spent decades as a familiar character actor, the captain on the police series M Squad, and a face in films like The Americanization of Emily. His death came on the 23rd of November 1973 at 70 in Studio City, the specific cause never made public. The journey did not finish in Hollywood. His body was carried more than 1,000 miles from the studios where he worked to rest at Coyle Cemetery in Logan County, Oklahoma. The old vaudeville trooper who once played 10 shows before sundown was carried home at the last, laid down not among the sound stages but in the quiet Oklahoma ground far from every set he ever stood on. From a cemetery in Queens to scattered ashes in California to a plot in Oklahoma, The men of 12 O'Clock High came to rest in places the show never flew.